Hey there. Okay. So, start out by saying that yesterday I was shooting a video and there was a technical difficulty. My phone got full and I had to delete some stuff and had some trouble doing that actually. So I had to figure some stuff out in order to be able to delete it. You know, you got all this, you know, Google Cloud stuff, and then your internal memory and SD card, and things aren't linking up the way they're supposed to. Well, I finally got it figured out and freed up a lot of space on my phone, and so here I am doing another video. But that also means that I shot over 30 minutes of video that actually got lost because of some technical difficulties. And when your phone memory gets full, uh, it starts doing funny stuff. But anyway, so that would explain why what I'm about to say might not tie in so smoothly. Well, previous videos you saw where one video ends, and in the next video, uh, my first sentence plays right off of how the other one ended. But anyway, that's why it's not transitioning so smoothly this time. But that said, let me see. The last thing that I recall addressing that made it into the last good video was, let me see, I left off saying how that Trump uh, really brought about the death of U.S. geopolitical influence, uh, and that is one of these deaths that corresponds with that fourth apocalyptic course. And then it says after this writer, whose name is Death, that Hades follows close behind, and I'm referring to Revelation chapter 6. And as I said in a previous video, at least one previous video, um, a lot of what I have to say about what I think is coming down the pike for the U.S. and the world, but mainly the U.S., what I see coming down the pike is the death of the U.S. geopolitical influence. That death is kind of a slow death, but it continues um, after the end of the Trump administration. And I also mentioned how that Biden's over in Europe. I think I might have misstated his schedule a little bit. Uh, and so he's I think that he did the G20 first, and now he's going to the climate accord meeting. But don't quote me on that. I didn't make it a point to commit his schedule to memory. But what I do know is that he didn't have as many victories here at home as he had hoped. Didn't get everything through Congress that he wanted to get through Congress in terms of climate issues and economic issues. And I did see a clip of him on the news today. In that clip, well, he said a few things, but one of the things that he said, was that he had hoped the U.S. could be a leader and an example in terms of climate issues, and he doesn't think that we're doing that we're being that example, that leader. And it's because of the decisions made by Congress within the last few days, today being November 1st, 2021. I'm not sure when you're watching this video, but today is November 1st, 2021. So, there's all that. But anyway, so I also said that in a different context, Revelation mentions the second death, which is where hell gets cast into the lake of fire. And what I didn't say is that I believe God sets up two worlds at a time, and He spends a total of 10,000 years on each pair of worlds. I'm a young Earth believer, and 3,000 years of preparation, and then He creates the world, and after the world has been around for 7,000 years, He destroys it and um, creates a new world, and I should say pairs of worlds. He works on pairs of worlds, and this world is light years from heaven to the right of God's throne. And the other world is light years from heaven to the left of God's throne. He gets through working on those two. He casts them further out into the universe, spreads them further apart, and then creates two more worlds. And there's a 10,000 year cycle with each pair of worlds. But anyway, so anyway, so why did I bring that up? Oh yeah, and so I brought that up because the hell from this world and the hell from the other world to the left of God's throne that He's working on, they get cast into the lake of fire, and then 10,000 years later, two more hells from two more worlds get cast into the lake of fire, and that actually now it makes sense to have the lake of fire where hell is getting cast into the lake of fire. Otherwise it's like, well, if what you want to do is turn up the heat, why didn't you just turn up the heat? Why did you have to make a whole new place, right? But the lake of fire is that converging place for all of the hells from all of the worlds that God works on. At least that's what I believe. Um, so, Revelation says that the lake of fire is the second death. And I kind of jumped back over to these apocalyptic horsemen who I don't believe are actual beings. I believe that it's just some sort of cloud, some sort of essence that God breathes out, and it goes out over the world and breaks up and spreads out and affects people in different ways. Okay. But I also said that I believe He uses that pattern multiple times, differing degrees, differing doses, if you will. But I think also that this second death applies in a different way. So even as the U.S. has experienced the death of its geopolitical influence, the U.S. is going to experience a second death, or I should say the U.S. government is going to experience a second death. And that second death is going to be the loss of any domestic influence. We already see states knocking heads with the federal government for at least a couple of major reasons. There's the abortion issue. There's the mask mandates. Okay, and so I said that I believe that 2022 is going to be the year of the second death of the U.S. government. Uh, that there's going to be so much tension between the federal government and the 50 states, for federal government on one side, 50 states and the 5 territories on the other side, that all 55 jurisdictions are going to have some kind of beef with the federal government. And we're going to see every state and every territory opposing the federal government in some way. Okay, maybe the territories are in a weaker position and they can't really do that. I don't know, um, but that's going to be the second death of the U.S. government, of its power anyway. It's not going to completely go away, but it's just going to become, shall we say, impotent. And What I didn't say is that this is part of that 14th level of spirituality slash thought that I mentioned in a number of previous videos before the ones that I made yesterday. Um, and so we're going, and I did mention a while back, a few videos back, that I believe that God has used the U.S. government as a conduit for his necessary evils, and those necessary evils are actually that 13th spiritual level, and and uh, and I believe that God is actually shutting that down so that we can move on to that 14th and final level. And there is stuff after the 14th. I'm just, but it's just stuff that's really complex that I'm not going to begin to discuss. At least I have no immediate plans to do that. Maybe I'll change my mind later on. Uh, hey, if women can change their mind, I can change mine too, right? So, but let me see. So in 2022, we're going to see this second death of the U.S. Government losing its domestic influence. And I don't think people realize the full gravity of either death. Uh, and the U.S. having been a geopolitical powerhouse for several decades now, that has at the very least minimized the number of terror attacks we had to worry about, and it has actually done a lot to keep America safe. I'm not saying that all of our wars are self-defense wars, because they're surely not. Um, but the U.S. has pretty much terrorized other countries, and our government is like the biggest terrorist organization in the world. Yeah, I went there. Uh, but that has also allowed us to have a very high sense of security. It's kind of like a petite woman who weighs 120 pounds having this ginormous 350-pound muscular boyfriend, and she feels really safe, really, he can defend her in a moment's notice, and most guys that might offend him or his girlfriend, he can throw them 10 feet or better, and so when that guy gets a life-threatening staph infection in one of his arms, like I read about some wrestler that I never even watched. Uh, he had to get both legs and one arm amputated because of staph infection. So he was a big, strong guy, but after having three limbs amputated, he's not so big and strong anymore. But if that really big, strong boyfriend gets even one of his arms amputated, he's not going to be that great fighter. And so all of a sudden, his 120-pound girlfriend might not feel so safe anymore, and so even though his other arm that he still has might still be quite strong, he's now somewhat limited in his ability, and so the U.S. government, it's like that big bullish boyfriend that has protected its sweet little girlfriend, the American community, the U.S. community, and now that big bullish boyfriend has had one arm amputated. He got a staph infection, and so that's kind of where we're at, and it remains to be seen what sorts of things might happen because of our loss of geopolitical influence. Uh, and we already know that China is taunting Taiwan. Taiwan produces more than half of the world's semiconductors, which go into all pieces of technology, including this phone that I'm talking into right now. And so there's a spiraling effect in terms of things that don't get produced, like cars. Okay, and so and China has already told Taiwan you can't depend on the U.S. And the Taliban has said the same thing to the Afghan military. So we're already seeing some of what happened because of the death of the U.S. government's power abroad. And as they lose their power here at home in 2022, as I believe is going to happen, then we're going to go from being the United States to being the untied states. Uh, and states are going to assert their sovereignty. They've already begun to do so. It hasn't spread across all 50 states. And I mentioned two major issues, um, abortion and vaccine mandates, but there's also the election issue. And a lot of the states, they're they've bought into the Trump lie that he won the 2020 election, so they're doing stuff to try and make it where Republicans win going forward. Okay, that's the easiest way to explain it. And so let's watch in 2022 as the issues between the various states and territories on the one hand and the U.S. government on the other hand increase, and as we become more and more the untied states instead of the United States. And for those who didn't already take notice, those two words use the exact same set of letters. You just switch the T and the I around. But anyway, that's kind of where I see things going. Uh, but also, there's Kamala Harris. So, I believe that Joe Biden, he's a realist. I really like the way that he came off when he defended his decision to pull out of Afghanistan. Regardless of what you think about how things went, okay, uh, let's put it in perspective that before August 26th of this year, um, we'd already lost like 2,448 U.S. soldiers over there. We lost 13 more on August 26th with that suicide bombing uh, and the shooting that followed. And in that war as a whole, uh, we lost like 47,000 and some odd Afghan civilians. So about 200 of them died on August 26th of 2021. I can't forget that date. It's actually my 84-year-old mother's birthday. But so when you look at that and at the fact that over 51,000 Taliban fighters died during those 20 years as well, and then I think it's something like 444 reporters, 72 aid workers, or maybe it's the other way around with those two numbers. But I mean, it's well over 100,000 people total that died as a result of that 20-year war, and about 2,450 of them were U.S. Service members before August 26th. So, all in all, we lost about 1/200 or 1/2% of the U.S. service members and Afghan civilians on that one day as we were pulling out. That's what we lost throughout the entire war. And for those of you who aren't that good at math, it means we lost 199 times as many people in both categories, Afghan civilians and U.S. service members, before August 26, 2021. And therefore, it creates the logic that, well, hey, we were losing that many Afghan civilians and that many U.S. service members about every 37 days throughout the course of the war. Okay, and so we lost 37 days worth of people on one day, but after we've been out for 37 days, 75 days, 150 days, and on, and we're not losing any more people, then those losses don't seem so big and so bad, if they're not your family members that were lost on that day. Okay, so the family members of those lost on that day are still grieving. I get that. Okay, but in terms of the number of losses, uh, when compared to the what we lost over the whole 20 years, it really doesn't make any sense to be upset about what we lost on that one day. And I've got someone trying to call me, but I'm trying to finish the video. Uh, okay. But as far as Kamala Harris is concerned, I think that Joe Biden is trying to set things up for her. I said he's a realist. I mentioned how that I like how real he was when he defended his decision to pull out of Afghanistan, and then of course I got into a long defense of him, uh, despite how problematic the withdrawal was. He said a lot of things about how you have loss of life in war. You have loss of life when you withdraw from the war. He said that he inherited Trump's promise to the Taliban that he would be out. He extended the time by several months, but he had to leave at some point. Otherwise, they were going to resume fighting. The Taliban was going to resume fighting the U.S.